I'm Mike Reiner. This is my wife Marcie, and today we're going to talk a little bit about our marriage and chronic illness. I met Marcie almost 30 years ago. I walked into her dad's church. She came running to the back of the church. She walked to the back of the church. She said, "Hey, would you like to come over for lunch? The pastor would like to have new people over for lunch." So I was a single bachelor. I was like, free food, great. I went over there with a guy who was also new to the church. He was also a Penn State football fan, also an Air Force officer. I spent the afternoon talking with him. I went home that afternoon. I was like, that was awesome. Really excited to meet Rich.
I'll tell my part.
Okay.
I had been praying for my future husband. I committed that I wasn't going to date until God brought him into my life. So when Mike and Rich came over, I just knew. I just could not stop smiling. It was it was stupid. I think we even sat next to each other at lunch. My family would always hold hands when we would eat. That's what I was thinking about, holding his hand.
I think you meant while we pray.
While we pray.
Kind of hard to eat while we're
When
holding
we
hands.
pray. After the guys left, I told my parents that I had met my future husband. They said, "Oh, Rich is such a nice guy." And I went, "No, the other one." And they were like, "Really?" So we dated pretty fast. We were, engaged within a year.
We got married, and then we immediately moved to Iceland, and that was our first of 17 moves.
We had been married 12 years. I was very healthy. I started to not feel very well. Our daughter was in 4th grade, and I was diagnosed with autoimmune hepatitis. After that, I was diagnosed with mixed connective tissue disease, fibromyalgia, and was diagnosed with epilepsy.
We got a whole bowl full of questions here from y'all. Before we really dive into the questions, I think we should just give some context of our answers, because who we are will impact how we answer all these different questions. For us, our faith is central to our marriage and to our lives as individuals and as a couple and as a family. So if you're somebody who doesn't have faith in God, some of our answers might not sound practical for you, but we can't answer from any other perspective. Our individual relationships with Jesus Christ are central to who we are, and so that impacts every area of our life. We'll just dive into this giant bowl of questions. Who is the first to say, "I'm sorry"?
Oh, me.
Totally her. I have to think it through.
Oh, I
A
was
lot
going
more.
to say, what were you going to say?
No, I just take more time to think
think.
through. Has Marcie's illness changed or challenged your faith? After all, believing that God can heal, but seeing that he isn't or hasn't yet is difficult for a lot of us. We do believe that God can heal, but for whatever reason, he has chose not to. It's not saying that he never will heal Marcie, but we had to come to a place where we're okay that he doesn't. Do I still pray that she'll be healed? Absolutely. I also always pray that God's will be done and not our own. There are absolutely parts of our story, parts of our lives that God has used, and we're able to encourage people that are either going through this themselves or who are medical professionals. I hope that they see God in our lives and are able to say, wow, that they're able to get through some really hard things because of God. One of the things Marcie didn't mention was that, well, I don't even know if you mentioned Emma. So we do have a 25-year-old daughter. Probably should have mentioned that up front. So we have Emma. She is also chronically ill. After Emma was born, our daughter Cora was stillborn. And that was really hard on our faith. That was certainly not something I hope that anybody ever goes through, but I know without a doubt that God used that to change our hearts and make us better able to minister to other people. So did God want our daughter to die? No, I don't believe that. I don't believe that he causes evil. I'm also willing to just hold that an open hand and let God use that in a way that I could never imagine.
I think I would add too, I don't know where my faith would be if I was not chronically ill. I can say that I'm glad for it because my reliance on God is everything. And if I was still healthy and where I was before I got sick, I don't know if I honestly have that deep reliance on him. I hope I would. But when you have to pray and ask God, to get you out of bed, or you need to see particular doctors and you don't know how it's going to get paid for, and you see that God is working. It's amazing. And so just because I'm chronically ill doesn't mean that God has forgotten me. I've gone through a time where after my second seizure, I got really, really mad at God and had to come to a place of saying that I was going to let go and just lay it at his feet. But it took a long time for me to get there. I think people see our joy, even in the midst of massive pain, we can still find something to laugh over. And that's definitely my faith in God, knowing that He's going to get us through that.
Who went in for the first kiss?
Totally me. Okay, how do you prioritize your marriage in seasons when Marcie's symptoms are more pronounced or challenged?
Flexible. Your plans could go out the window in an hour, and sometimes those can be big plans, or it could be just something small like we're not going to be able to go for a walk. I'm going to just have to hop in bed and read a book.
Yeah, next to me.
Lay next to you. Finding different ways to still spend time together when our plans are changed because of what she physically can or can't do that day. Marcie, I struggle to feel sexy sometimes when my symptoms are flaring. Do you have any tips that might help me get in the mood?
Why doesn't it say
It says,
Mike and Marcie?
it says in the mood. And not feel so self-conscious. One of the ways to not feel self-conscious for her is believing that I love her and that she will always be sexy to me no matter what her body is doing,
Yeah.
whether she's flaring or not, or whatever the symptoms. I think the most important part of feeling sexy and not self-conscious is knowing that I love her for who she is and not what she's wearing
Right.
or not wearing, how she...
And the other component of that is that I believe him. There's some marriages where the guy or spouse may say, oh, you look so beautiful. And we can have this internal conversation with ourselves of, no, I don't. Why does he think I'm beautiful? I'm not beautiful with my weight gain or whatever is going on with your body. So you have to stop yourself and say, no, I believe him. That, I think, is one of the big first steps of getting in the mood.
As you get older, you're going to realize that sexiness is
It
not...
changes.
Well, but it's also, it's not about just the body. It's
Right.
in your mind and your emotions.
Yes.
More than anything.
And it gets a lot better once you've been married a long time.
Mike, what is one piece of advice you would offer to a young man who is dating a chronically ill woman? So I can't really answer that from firsthand experience because when I dated Marcie, we didn't know she was sick. But I think you're going to have to be willing to make sacrifices. You're going to have to make some hard choices about being selfless, truly meaning that you're going to put your spouse ahead of yourself. Basically, your whole life plan could be changed completely, and it's going to impact your life in ways that you couldn't even imagine. If you're not willing to do that, maybe you're not ready for marriage. That goes for any marriage. You've got to be willing to put yourself second and put your spouse ahead of your own interests. Chronic illness just magnifies that even more. I think you could say that for almost any of the questions. Chronic illness puts a stress on any relationship. It's either going to drive you apart or it's going to drive you closer together. It's not neutral. That intense pressure has driven both Marcie and I closer to God and closer to each other, and it has really compressed our marriage together. That's not common. A lot of relationships, that pressure is going to break them apart, and it really comes down to what is the foundation of your marriage.
And I think making a choice. It's a choice to stay together.
Yeah. Which of you is most stubborn? Me. Just down.
I can be a little stubborn too.
To be in a relationship with someone who is chronically ill. Answer honestly.
Answer honestly.
That's the only way I answer. So I guess the way I would look at this is I'm in a relationship with Marcie, who happens to be chronically ill. That doesn't define who she is. Her chronic illnesses are something that impacts her life, absolutely. Every aspect of her life. But it doesn't define us. And it doesn't define who I have a relationship with.
He's a better cook. That is
That's
definitely
easy.
him.
Yeah.
That's easy.
That's an easy one. But yeah, I like to cook.
And I like to clean. I want to have kids, but in my current health, I know I don't have the energy to be a parent. How do I have this conversation with a potential spouse? Any tips for planning a family in light of chronic illness? We had 3 miscarriages before Emma. And actually, after we lost Cora, we had to have the conversation, are we going to try to have any more children? We had to lay down our wants at the feet of Jesus and pray about it and decide, whatever he had planned for us, we were okay with. The person who is chronically ill, that doesn't have the energy right now to be a parent, you have to work through that yourself. Because if you haven't worked through that and then you talk to a potential spouse, that's going to be harder. I think you need to have peace about that first.
Marcie's sister has similar chronic illnesses. They appeared in her life much earlier. So she already knew when she met her now husband. They had that conversation. They chose that they were not going to have kids because of her health. But I think she had already worked through that before she had that conversation with him.
Let me say to, if there's any couples out there who are talking about having children or not, talk to your doctor, because together, if you go to them and say, we are thinking about having kids, how could that impact me? That could actually help your decision on whether or not you have kids.
First. I don't either. Probably me. No, I don't remember. It was 30 years ago.
It was a long time. You said it today first.
Yes. Challenging parts of being married to someone who is chronically ill. Just the unpredictability and probably having to say no a lot of times to things that we really want to do. Sometimes that's hard when somebody has asked you to go to dinner 3 or 4 times and every time you're last minute canceling. I feel like they're going to think, oh, they just don't want to go out to dinner with us. It's hard for somebody who's not in this situation to really understand that it popped up and, we can't go this time, but we'll try and go another time.
Maybe you don't want to go out to dinner and you use your chronic illness. No, not me, never. I don't know if anybody else feels like this, but sometimes you can get kind of tired of being the educator of chronic illness. Sometimes you just have to have patience and you just have to take the time to explain that. Okay.
That's a long one.
How would you advise a younger married couple who are struggling in their intimacy and marriage? My husband and I aren't sure how to navigate frustration when my symptoms are flaring and intimacy becomes difficult. I think you need to redefine your intimacy. Intimacy just isn't intercourse. There's going to be some times where you're going to be in flares and you wouldn't be able to have intercourse. But there's other ways that you can be intimate. You just have to talk about it. And you need to talk about it before you're in sexy grown-up time, because then things more stressful.
Yeah, communication's important and sexy grown-up time. It's having that conversation when you're not in the bedroom and just being able to talk through, frankly, like this part hurts or this part is real sensitive right now.
That's all I'm going to say about that.
You have a child with chronic illness. How has that impacted your marriage and how have you navigated that? I think one very practical way is Emma still lives at home with us and she'd like to move out. We would like for her to move out and we're a very close family. I think like many people, we expected that by this time she would be living on her own and doing her own things, and that's not where we are right now, and we have to be okay with it. It might never be. So certainly that has impacted, our views of what it would be like when we were empty nest.
You had times where you had to take care of both of us. And, that is an added stress to you. her symptoms started early on.
Middle schoolish.
We didn't want that for her by any means. And so there could be times where we were both frustrated about that and could take that out on each other. We had to talk, look, I'm not mad at you, I'm mad at the situation. Because it is stressful as parents if your child is chronically ill.
The best thing you can give your kids is a healthy marriage, that they never have to worry about your marriage, about your commitment to one another. That's the best thing you can give your kids. Which are you the messiest? Obviously it's me, but neither of us are very messy. We're both kind of orderly. My spouse is currently stuck in denial about my extreme disease and prognosis. How can I help my spouse get to a place of acceptance?
Take them to your doctor.
Yeah, I've been to pretty much all her doctor's appointments if I wasn't out of the country. I think that's important for a lot of reasons. It's always really good to have both of you there at the doctor's, hearing through different lenses or filters, and even taking notes. And then afterward, talking about what you heard, because we would often come out of the doctor's appointments and have heard two completely different things depending on where we were emotionally. Having them hear straight from the doctor and have them asking questions to the doctor themselves, not just you, will go a long way toward understanding, accepting what your spouse is going through.
The best
Which
answer?
of you is the best dancer? She is, but
No.
I don't dance. To deal with the stresses of Marcie's chronic illness. What are some of the practical ways that you de-stress?
Chocolate.
What are some of the healthy ways that you de-stress? For me, I'm an introvert and I love geocaching. And if you don't know what it is, Google it. But I go out and basically use the GPS to find Tupperware hidden in the woods. It sounds stupid, but it gets me out, not thinking about all the stresses, but just kind of enjoying nature. Definitely working out is important. Cranking up the music and trying to remember not to sing out loud when Emma and Marcie are still sleeping. That's a de-stressor.
One of the biggest things that I do that what?
Reorganize the house? Redecorate?
No,
Oh.
I would never do that. For me, when I am stressed, I tend to turn the TV on, especially if I'm having a bad pain day, or I clean. I should be exercising is what I should be doing. More grown-up sexy time.
Marcie, what is it like to parent through your chronic illness? I'm concerned about how my chronic illness might affect my ability to parent well.
It's hard. I struggled with guilt. I struggled with balance of what to say no to and what not to.
The other thing is fighting the tendency to want to maybe spoil when you are well to make up for the time when you're not.
Oh, that's good. Yeah.
Not going overboard to try and make up for times that you weren't able to do things.
In our culture, you have to be busy, constantly be going, going, going. A benefit of being chronically ill is that we have to have days where we stay home and we have to rest. I think of families with kids that are just constantly going. Sometimes you just need to stay home and
Yeah, I think that's really
watch a
good.
movie or whatever.
There were times to just come home and play. It was actually better for Emma to not
Yeah.
do something all the time.
If there is a friend that your child has that y'all are close with, talk to the friend's parents. Look, this is what I am going through. And explain to them that there may be days that play dates may get canceled, and it has nothing to do with the kids. It has to do with you and your health. The other mom hopefully could teach their kid that sometimes families have things that are really hard that are going on in their life, and how can we bless them? You know, the play date changing to their house or whatever. Would you
Marcie,
have-
do you ever struggle with feelings of guilt or being a
Yes.
burden in your marriage? If so, how do you navigate those feelings?
Absolutely, all the time. When we have something planned and I had to call him and say, look, I can't do it. It's me. I'm the one that is saying I can't do it all the time.
But that's when I remind you that it's not you. Your diseases have caused this. I struggle because I will react to whatever is being canceled with disappointment, but I have to remember to tell her I'm not disappointed with you.
Mm-hmm.
I'm disappointed at the situation. I'm disappointed that we can't do this thing because of the diseases, but I'm not ever disappointed with you, and
Yeah.
you are never a burden. But there is disappointment, and it would be dishonest to hide that disappointment.
Yeah. Which of you is the best singer? Sometimes.
Bonus points if
No.
you can prove it. No.
No, I'm not going to show.
Just take her word. She is a much better singer. What would each of you say are some of the most important characteristics or traits in someone who makes a good partner or spouse to a chronically ill person?
Listeness.
Flexibility or adaptability?
A good sense of humor, though, too. A couple years ago, I ended up in the hospital. They let him come up for dinner, but when he ordered it, he called and said, "I'd like a romantic dinner for two," which made me laugh. There's a time to get serious when you're chronically ill, and there's a time where you can laugh and make some jokes. Levity has always helped in our marriage. So for me, it would be also a sense of humor. Do you have any pets?
No.
Mike is not a pet person.
No. In what ways did your expectations for your marriage change when Marcie became chronically ill? I think as we fully realized the extent of her illnesses and what the future could look like, I think it changed everything.
Have you ever had to grieve about our future, of how you thought it would look and how it's changed?
Yeah. Certainly, I thought we would be traveling a lot when I was retired. I thought potentially we would even be living overseas. Any decisions now about where we live have to look at the type of medical specialty care that she's going to need.
Most emotional, me, I would say.
Probably, yeah. Outwardly emotional, definitely. But I have a heart. Boy, you always get all the sex questions.
It's because you're handing them to me. Sex in a marriage with chronic illness can be challenging for a lot of us. Practically, how have the two of you found ways to navigate and communicate through that part of your marriage? You just have to talk ahead of time. If we are having that time and he touches me and I say, "Oh, don't touch me there," that's gonna kill the mood. Talk ahead of time about how would you want me to communicate that to you.
And I guess not to take things in the wrong way. If I touch Marcie in a way that causes her pain and she reacts to that, I need to recognize that she's not rejecting me, but I just need to not go there. Are there any pros or upsides to being in a relationship with chronic illness? I'm not in a relationship with chronic illness. I'm in a relationship with Marcie. She has chronic illnesses, but I'm in a relationship with her. So there's lots of pros to being in a relationship with her. I think we talked about, on a serious side, just the impact that her chronic illnesses have had on both of our faith. It has definitely driven us out of just being in a comfort zone and just kind of cruise control, and really driven us to a place of dependence on God. Also, just the changes it's made in my heart, especially, and in Marcie's, but more so in mine, empathy and ability to be able to minister to the people that are going through hard times. My openness to show emotion. I was very, very closed off to showing any emotion, and I'm still not great at it, but it definitely has changed that part of me in a good way.
Say that too about Emma, growing up, not just being chronically ill herself, but there were a lot of times that Emma had to take care of me.
I was in Iraq.
Yeah.
For the first year she was sick.
And I think because of that, she actually has an awareness of people around her that are hurting. She really does see people and love people where they truly are at.
Yeah.
We all do. And that is a benefit of being chronically ill. That is a gift for us, that we can go to places and just love on people.
Yeah, those little whiteboards in the emergency room. I like to leave little notes right before we leave and just write some little thank you notes. When dating, how can I tell if my date just says the right things or if he's really going to be there for me as I deal with chronic illness? Have him call me and I will find out. And then I'll let you know. I know some people. I think his actions will really tell you. Do his actions say that he's selfless? Is he holding the door? Is he asking what you want to do? Is he taking you places that you want to go rather than just where he wants to go? Selflessness is essential if you're going to have a relationship with someone that's in a chronic illness. I would say it's essential to any marriage that's going to be healthy, is you have to have selflessness. But it's even more so, it's magnified in a relationship when there's chronic illness. So if they're not showing selflessness in the little things, they're probably not going to show them in the big things when it really matters. And they can say all the right words, but if their actions don't back it up, move on.
One thing that my sister did when her and my brother-in-law started to date, she told him, if I cancel, it's not because I don't want to be with you, it's just because I'm having a flare. How he handled that showed her where his heart was. So I think that's a big one. If he gets mad, say, see ya.
I think another thing is, does he ask about your illness? Does he actually show an interest in what you're dealing with and trying to understand? He can't completely ever understand. I know I can't, but I can ask questions and I can have empathy and want to know what she's going through.
Does he try and find out information like, are there certain foods that you shouldn't eat?
And if he doesn't ask about it ever, then probably not. All right, last one. In both of your opinions, what is the key to creating a strong, lasting marriage, especially when one spouse has chronic illness?
Relationship with Jesus.
Even without the chronic illness, the foundation of our marriage has to be on God. As important as our relationship is with each other, our individual relationships with Jesus are even more important. And as we draw closer to Him, it will draw us closer together. And without that foundation, anything else we could advise you of is secondary. Certainly selflessness is important, and the only way you can do that is if you trust your spouse completely and that they are going to be putting your interests ahead of their own.
Did you say friendship?
No.
He is my best friend. There's nobody there's nobody that I trust more or
would rather be with. Make you laugh.
Makes me, I have major brain fog and I'm not understanding. He will explain things to me in a way that I do understand.
Communication, humor, making time for grown-up sexy time. That's just weird. But making time for that part of your relationship is important.
That's about it. I hope that by answering some of that question, we can give some of that love back. We would have loved your group when I first got sick. We were trying to go through it all on our own. What you are doing is so important, and we love you, and just know that God loves you.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.